What's up guys, Will here with Rennthusiast, my YouTube channel that is all about air-cooled Porsche 911 ownership experience. If you've been hanging around this channel for any length of time, you know that a big part of it is interviewing owners about their own Porsche 911. Some of the stories I've heard are just so entertaining, and each of these cars has a really interesting, unique history, and you love to hear the owners tell us why they love their cars. I thought it would make a lot of sense to do kind of a backstory video on this 69 911 T. So if you guys have been following along, then I picked this car up like a month and a half ago. I've spent a fair amount of time dialing it in, modifying it, getting it up to my taste, making a couple changes to the motor. I'll put a card up to the first video I did on this car, and you guys can kind of follow those videos if you want some background. Today, I interviewed the previous owner of this car, a guy by the name of Charles Stanley. Charles and I got together the other day and shot a video to give you guys not only the story on this Ossi Blue 911, but also to give you some tips in general if you're looking to buy a long hood 911. So here's what we're gonna cover. The condition of this hot rod when Charles found it, the work that had to take place to get it into its condition as it sits now, what makes this 911 more hot rod than stock, what to look for if you're in the market for a long hood 911, and at the end of this video, we'll share the single best tip for buying a classic 911 safely. So before I jump into that, I want to share a couple of air-cooled Porsche 911 resources for you. I have a Facebook group that I started called Rennthusiast Air-Cooled Porsche Fans. Great resource for new and seasoned owners alike. Guys are talking about drives, technical questions, picks, auction results, product reviews, etc. I see guys sharing cars for sale in that group. So if you're interested in that, that's Rennthusiast Air-Cooled Porsche Fans. One more thing to share with you is I'm stoked that I'm beginning to offer Rennthusiast merchandise. I have a couple of t-shirts in production right now. I'm gonna have some more decals in the future, so the design work's happening as we speak. These shirts aren't really ready for prime time just yet, but keep your eyes peeled for them coming down. So if you're not a subscriber, definitely subscribe. You'll be notified of new videos as well as merchandise. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the main event. All right guys, here we are, as promised, the backstory on this 69 911 T. I am joined by the previous owner, Mr. Charles Stanley. Charles is going to take us through the backstory on the car. It's very, very interesting. As you guys know, every one of these cars has a story. I am semi-familiar with this, but I can't wait to do a deep dive and hear what Charles has to tell us. So Charles, I'm gonna turn it over to you, man. You can tell us a little bit about the previous ownership and what you did to improve this car.
All right, man. Thank you so much for handing over the mic. Is that lawnmower back there gonna present me challenges?
I guess we're gonna have to see.
We're gonna find
out.
Guys,
here's the deal. This is the challenge. I don't know if you can see it out there. There's a dude mowing the lawn. We got to get this interview done though. So if it's there, I'm sorry. Welcome to YouTube. This is not professional level.
It gives us that, summertime fresh grass feel. I can.
That's it.
Man, can that convey?
That's it. That's it, man.
So we've got this 69 here, and the story is this car was actually discovered in California, and it was on a forum for probably a number of months, but the current owner was a bit non-communique, should we say. He wasn't really responding to folks' emails, or just kind of, he had posted it and kind of lingered. So he had dropped the price a couple times, I think, and I really wasn't aware of the car. And a friend who was interested and kind of chased it, he turned me on to it. He's like, hey man, I'm not gonna buy this, but this is kind of a cool car. And the guy's kind of hard to get a hold of, but you ought to check it out. So I took his lead and I reached out to the guy a number of times, and again, he didn't respond to me. So it was just kind of this ghost ad hanging out there. Fortunately, when I acquired this car in 2017, I went out west to Luftgekühlt with my car and did some driving, and then I rallied from Luftgekühlt in LA up to San Francisco, and I stayed 3 days between Luftgekühlt and an R Group Treffen, which was in Napa Valley. So in between that, I finally got in touch with the guy, and I think he realized, hey, I'm boots on the ground local at that point. And myself and Cameron Whalen of Whalen Motorsports in Sebastopol, California, we went out, finally met the guy, took it for a drive, and it drove great, it felt great. It was just it was a good car that had been done right back in the day, and it had kind of been maybe neglected or allowed to kind of you know, maybe say deferred maintenance over the last number of years, but it was all there. So Cameron and I checked it out and had a blast with it. Agreed to buy this, delivered the money, sealed the deal, and I actually had it shipped from California directly to my guy to do some paint work.
So you had some paint work, clearly. I
Yes.
want to hear about that, and I want to hear about what color it was when you found it, but also there was a fair amount of rust repair. Is that fair?
There more rust repair than I expected, but I think that's really telling of don't buy an East Coast car on the West Coast.
Well, and with these older cars, I mean, rust is a real issue.
Rust
right?
is a real issue. You know, Porsche didn't galvanize the chassis until 1978, and so the early long hoods, they shine in California because of the climate and just the lack of harsh winters and road salts. So again, don't buy an East Coast car from the West Coast because you're going to get all the problems, but you may not realize it. You know, this car, it was silver, or maybe I should say a gray, not quite a metallic, more of like a matte gray. It looked matte, maybe it wasn't matte, but time had steered it into that matte, and it had dark gray racing stripes, the ones that kind of come up here and go up there. So it was a really cool car. Also, the previous owner was Paul Ripley, our group guy, Northeast. He did a great job building it, and he really pulled it into that classic, I'm gonna make modifications that enhance the drivability of the car, rally it, just little tweaks here and there just to make it more fun in leading into that hot rod. The guy that I snagged it from, I think he was in Walnut Creek, and he had this on the street. He had a GT3, he had a BMW M3, he had a BMW M5, he had a 69S Ossi Blue in the garage that wasn't running, and a 60 356 Cabriolet in the garage. And I think he also had a 930 Turbo at a shop.
So this car was in good company.
It had a lot of friends. All those friends were kind of sick, and they needed some love. There were 2 cars in his garage that didn't run. Everything else was on the street in Walnut Creek, California. So this had leather seats with houndstooth, but the California sun had deteriorated the houndstooth.
Yeah.
So it was basically just kind of fluffing up.
So were those the Recaros that came with the car?
Those were the Recaros that came with it.
And
the leather.
You did the cord in it.
Correct. The leather side bolsters were great. The houndstooth was pretty tired, so I did the cord inside. It had a little bit of a, you know, you could say scab or bubble here and here. And so I was like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna take it down to bare metal and repaint it. Maybe a little rust repair there. You know, it felt fine when you tapped it, and then a little bit of something right there. And so I was like, yeah, it's not gonna be a big deal. But
then.
Yeah, but then I get it to my guy Matt Caro in on the border of kind of Delaware, Pennsylvania. He was excited to get it and make a game plan. So when we took it down to bare metal, windows out, bare metal, everything away, you saw it had some issues. So the good thing was I had a guy that had the skills and the talent and the time to do it. The bad news was what went to a bare metal respray became inner outer rockers, floor pans, front horseshoe, front 2 fenders. It's rock solid, it's done right, it's aligned, it's, you know, the doors and everything, it's just been done correct. Yeah. It took a little bit longer and it cost more money.
But that's always how it is.
Yeah, but it was done absolutely fantastic. We did new carpet, used the same window trim, new headliner, new dash, and so really everything that you could do to make it right, to make it robust, and to make it solid was done. And this is single stage Ossi Blue paint. This chassis left the factory in 1969 with Ossi Blue paint, and so I just thought it's a killer color. Since we're doing glass out respray, let's go back to the way it left the factory. And that took a little bit longer. I shipped it to him in 2017. He was giving me a buddy deal. He was also doing it in his shop, and so it wasn't fast, but it got done right. So I didn't get it back from him until the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. So
So multi-year.
Multi-year, yeah. He did some work, and also, you know, he pulled the engine, put the engine back in. We decided to do new dog teeth in the transmission, tranny seals, all the little stuff that you'd want to do, new clutch, pressure plate, flywheel, those kind of things. And I'm in a situation where I have other cars. So I wasn't like, man, you know, hey man, Matt, I need this so I can go drive. I'm driving my primary car.
And you got this guy over here.
I've got the 993 and my rally car that's, you know, kind of known, white with the olive hood. I've been rallying that car for a decade plus. I really like that car. I'm comfortable with it. And
so you had given thought to keeping this for your own personal use?
Yeah, you know, a neat car came up, and I love chasing a cool car with a great story, so I snagged it. It wasn't purchased as something to resell. It was more of like, hey man, this is a great long hood from a friend, Paul Ripley, and let's bring it back to life, and then I'm gonna make a plan from there. I think my wife and I, Chrissy, we were out on a drive and she's like, man, this is so stiff and this is such a ripper. It's very much the same car as your white and olive green car. And I said, hey, you know, at that moment, really the light came on and I'm like, hey, I've got these two rippers and it might be neat to pass this on to another good owner and then get maybe a civilized long hood. Since every rally I do, I'm gonna jump in my 85 backdate. I mean, I just like it. It hits above its weight. That olive hood's kind of a forever car. This one, you know, you just happen to say, hey, I might be wanting to get into one. And so I said, well, come check this out. And
well, I loved the timing. I had exited my 964, I think, at the right time, and this car was available, and I couldn't be happier. This fits my personal preference way more than that 964 did, just in terms of the driving experience I'm looking for. It's so raw, you know.
It's a great example, and I think, you know, like when you take something down to bare metal, it's easy to start thinking about going with Carrera flares, going with ST. I had really toyed with ST at the time. I liked ST, and so you have the opportunity to put ST flares on four corners, but I kept it narrow, I kept it true, and I think, you know, 10 years ago everyone was doing 73 RS clones. And I didn't want to go there, but I'm very glad that I just kept it factory, you know, rip it like it is. This is a 2.8 liter, plenty of power. You don't need a 3.6 or a 3.2 or a 3 liter. It really plays well with this chassis and the tight setup, and it's rowdy. It's everything you want, and you're not kind of shooting above your weight. A lot of times when you can overpower this chassis with too much horsepower, and you're losing what you're chasing. And so I think this is that perfect setup with that.
So Charles, outside of the rust repair insight that you shared, like what tips would you give anybody who is looking to get into a long hood? And before you answer, let me just say this. Ever since this car's come on the channel, I've had a lot of guys hit me up, hey, that's a great car, I'm looking for something similar. Any tips you'd share with guys that are in the hunt right now?
I would really say you want to try to get some backstory on a car, try and get some paperwork. As I mentioned earlier, these cars weren't galvanized before they painted. So depending on where it was owned and how it was driven or cared for, underneath that paint can be a can of worms or it can be great metal. I just acquired a 1970 911T this past weekend. And he had all these images from where it was taken down to bare metal and repaired. He's got records that the engine was rebuilt. It's a 2.2, which is great. It's not a 2.8, but it's just a good car. And you know, a lot of the auction sites you can't see behind the curtain, so you got to really be careful. I think you really try and work with people. You know, you can clean up dirt, but it's hard to clean up abuse. And so you really, you know, look at the cars, get a great asset in your corner that can help you along the way. It's like getting a guitar teacher that's teaching you the guitar. You know, get someone that's kind of well-versed in these long hoods and early cars and let them help you out.